What is your reaction or facial expression when you know you made some heat?
It's got to be something like, ooh.
Oh, I like that one. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Sonically podcast, where music creators educate music creators. I'm Elmo. In today's episode, we're joined by the incredibly gifted Mereba, a singer, songwriter, rapper, and producer known for blending soul, R&B, folk, and hip-hop into something truly unique. Her poetic lyricism and genre-defying sound have made her one of the most compelling voices in contemporary music. Now, Mereba is gearing up to release her highly anticipated new album, The Breeze Grew a Fire, dropping February 14th. With singles like Counterfeit and Phone Me already captivating listeners, this project promises to be one of her most immersive and introspective yet. In today's conversation, we'll dive into the themes behind her new album, her creative process, and the stories behind some of her most powerful songs. So without further ado, let's welcome Mereba to the show. Hey Mereba, how you doing?
Hey, thank you so much for that intro. I'm good.
No problem. Totally deserving. I'm a huge fan of what you do, and the one word that truly sticks out when I think about your presence is positivity and love. And I think just diving into your story a little bit today, I'm sure that that'll reflect. But I'm wondering if we could rewind the clock back a little bit to the beginning. Did you grow up with music in your life?
Well, yes. My mom is a huge lover of music. She has a naturally beautiful singing voice, like most of her sisters and brothers. She exposed me to music from a very just like a true appreciator of music, and not somebody who was pressuring me in any way to get into music, but just yeah, just taught me how to just admire it first and foremost.
What were some of the sonics that she or anybody was playing in the house during that time?
A lot of soul music and R&B music. That's mostly what her and my aunties would listen to and show me. My mom loved Whitney Houston, so that was my first favorite artist, and she would play her music all the time, particularly the soundtrack to The Bodyguard. Um, and so it was like a vocalist, and then also she loved Stevie Wonder. That's like still to this day her favorite artist. Roberta Flack, Marvin Gaye, just that kind of like golden era of soul music from the 70s, 60s, 70s. So that was my foundation. And then also just growing up in the Black church, like that was what I would hear every Sunday was gospel music, um, powerful voices, spiritual messages and themes. So that is definitely all part of my foundation.
With all of that foundation and all of those influences, how did you make your way from a listener to discovering the process of creating your own music?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely, from a pretty young age, I would say early elementary age, started just toying with the idea. Once I understood what was happening, like that I was listening to real people using their bodies to make these sounds and coming up with the music behind it and stuff, I slowly started to imagine myself in their place and imagine that maybe I had the power to create something that had never existed before me. And so it started with just kind of like while I was in school and I was supposed to be doing other things, I was writing in the margins of my papers, and I was like writing little poems that I would walk home. I walked home from school every day and I would turn into songs just kind of to pass the time. That's like my earliest memories of actually creating music. And I slowly would like start leaving little scraps of paper around the house, and my mom would be cleaning and be like, put your stuff away. And then slowly she's like, what are these? And I was like, these are my songs. She asked me to sing them for her. And they actually had melodies and things like that. So she was a little curious about that. And she started saving them instead of like throwing them away. And that was, I think, just her seeing me and her encouraging me. It just, again, it kind of cracked open that door a little bit more of like, maybe you do have the power to make something that makes other people feel how the music that you love makes you feel.
Yeah, so I read in your bio that part of your early learning was being taught folk music and learning folk music. How was that unique to Mereba as a songwriter?
Mm. So folk music came into my life once. We moved to North Carolina we're living outside of Philadelphia, and that was like during my formative years, elementary school, middle school. And when we moved to North Carolina, I was going into my freshman year of high school, and I was really sad and I was really depressed about moving, and I felt very fish out of water. I wasn't from the South. I didn't really know what to do with myself. And so luckily I had been over those years, I had been just kind of chiseling away at my songwriting, and I never stopped from those elementary years. I never stopped writing my little songs and showing them to my friends and to my family. And by the time I got there, I feel like I was in a good place to fully start using music as like a therapeutic healing thing for myself, because I actually was really sad and I was really lonely and I really struggled to make friends there. So I had been asking for a guitar, and I got a very cheap guitar that was very hard to play for Christmas, my freshman year. And I asked my mom if I could get a teacher, and she just looked around, and she might have just found the first teacher that she could find. And it was a folk guitarist who had a small room in the back of a guitar store in Greensboro, North Carolina. And he was just so random to me in my life. He was like almost, it was like almost, I don't know, he was almost imaginary. He was just so cool, but like quirky, and his life story was so strange, and he had clearly done a lot of drugs. And anyway, he was very, very interesting man. And he just saw something interesting in me. Like we would work on music, but he also would just talk to me about, who I am and what I was going through at the time. And he taught me a lot of technical things like finger picking and different chord progressions. And a lot of folk music chord progressions are kind of the foundations of like pop music. So I was starting to connect as I learned guitar. Oh, this sounds like this song, and oh, this is something that people use a lot in this style of music. And it kind of was such a great gateway as a songwriter to just universal sounds and progressions and things that move people kind of universally. So I studied with him for a couple years, and or maybe 1 year or so. And I told my mom that I think that I had kind of gotten the most that I could get out of him. We really just started talking more than doing guitar. And also another person who was just really encouraging to me to find my own voice and to be unique and to not conform to things that I'm told I should be into. And that was that was kind of the launching pad for me as a songwriter, to just really, really be like, this is what I'm supposed to do in life. This is what I've been given, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
I'm wondering what some of those early lessons that particular teacher taught you in comparison to just say an early piano lesson. Because when I think of folk music, I think of a genre of music that's very much based on storytelling, very much based on opening up yourself emotionally, as opposed to the technical side of things. So I'm wondering if there was something that he had instilled in you to open up your heart a little bit more or something like that.
He was this sort of like cryptic man, so he didn't necessarily come out and say that, but he every week he taught me a particular skill. So like if it was a particular finger picking pattern, he would write it out in a journal, which string to hit in which order, like a chart, a finger picking chart. And then he would teach me a folk song that went along with it. And now, like, as you said, folk songs, you play them differently every time. That's kind of the beauty of folk. It's not really like confined to one form. It just kind of is almost like oral tradition type of style of music. So he might teach me a song on the guitar, and I'll go listen to a recording of it, and I'm like, that's not how they're playing the guitar, but that's how he decided that it would be played to teach me that lesson. And I think just that fluidity and that kind of like shape shifting nature of folk music was really exciting for me at that time, because my life at that time started to make less sense to me as like an adolescent. My whole life getting kind of like uprooted, my parents going through like a very long divorce at the time when we moved to North Carolina, like, not, like I said, not really fitting in where I was. It's like that sort of shape shift energy of folk music really felt like it explained my life, and it explained things that didn't make sense to other people. It made sense to me. And that, I think, is something that he just emphasized, was like, he did really emphasize the stories that the songs would be telling. And as my lessons went on, I would sometimes go in and show him a song that I wrote, and I would sing it for him. And he was just really proud that I was starting to slowly piece my life that didn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, like, or around me, together through that form of music. And I think that's something I still carry to this day, is just like, maybe my pathway or my track isn't the most sensical, like, it doesn't make the most sense, but what does make sense is the way that I express about it, and the way that I'm kind of fluid about the different ways, the styles and techniques that I use to do that. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And fast forwarding to now, I mean, you've made some incredible music that has touched so many people around the world, doing tours, doing all the media that you've done. Looking back on everything up to this point, what have been some of the biggest challenges you've faced in your career, and how have you overcome them?
Mm, that's a great question. A few come to mind. Earlier on, I would say it definitely was just being misunderstood. That was like a solid chunk of my career thus far, was just the early days of, going around to people, to potential managers or labels or people that just were interested in working with me in one way or another, and being told that my approach to music and my sound would not make sense to people, or that it wasn't worth investing money and energy into. And that was like so many years of my journey, that I think by the time I got to a place where my sound had kind of formed into something a bit more like cohesive, I was so used to rejection, and I was so used to people telling me no, that it's like I was happy when I heard yes, but I also had gotten so kind of fortified in my own convictions about music. Like when someone's telling you can't do something, it just kind of makes you want to do it more sometimes.
Mm.
So that was a challenge, but also was like a benefit, I think, in its own way. And then I think moving forward, it's just not super easy to rely on your emotions and your feelings, and these really vulnerable parts of yourself to make a living,
Mhm.
especially not now. But I think it's just like, again, because my journey has been like this. I've worked other jobs. I've worked odd jobs. I've been a nanny. I've been a teacher. I've worked at restaurants. I've quit jobs randomly. I've done so many of the things to make money, that um, that's honestly the ongoing thing for me. It's just like, this is so special to me, and music is so special to me, and the intention behind what I do is really deep. So it then translating to like how I eat or how I live is still challenging for my mind to process sometimes. And sometimes it's like things are going great, and sometimes things are going not so great, and you really have to continue to stand on like the why and the reasons why you started, and the reasons why I wanted, as that girl sitting in my room on guitar writing songs, the reasons I wanted to reach people was for my music, again, to make them feel the way that music made me feel. And all of the logistics of it, you do have to figure out along the way, and it is challenging, but I feel like it's just the other side of the coin of like being blessed and able to do music for a living. So both challenges are like beautiful things, but also challenging, I would say.
Yeah. And along that path, when you are getting those no's, when
Mhm.
people are saying, I don't think so, not right now, if you did this, maybe,
Yeah,
um, I can imagine that there are times when you kind of flirt with the idea of throwing in the towel, but then you go back to your why, and there might have been some sort of like moments of confirmation that this is why I'm doing it. Um, did you have that? Did you experience that where like somebody came up to you and said, "Yes, I get you. Keep on doing this."
definitely. Definitely. I And so, I mean, there have been people on at each step of the way. Like when I was only getting no's, there was always one yes. There was always somebody who believed and at least, cared enough to see where I might take it. And sometimes that was only family. Sometimes that was like one random music industry person that was just like, I've seen this happen before and I'm actually gonna bet on it this time, or whatever it is. There's always been like murmurs of yeses, even when there were a lot of no's. But I mean, in recent history, definitely, I feel like my connection to my supporters is very strong because my music is so personal and vulnerable, and um, it kind of asks the listener to soften in order to receive it. So I feel like just the messages that I receive regularly, like whenever I perform, honestly, anytime I perform at this point, the why is so clear and so apparent to me. And it's just like it's yeah, again, it just feels like such a gift that I made it to the other side of all of those jobs and those things that I had to do in the meantime. And it does feel like one yes is very loud, you know? And now I feel like there are enough yeses that I'm like, okay, I'm doing something, but I still hold on to those times when there was just one. And
Mm.
sometimes you might only have one, and sometimes the one might be you. So you might have
Mm.
zero, but um, yeah, the why is pretty cemented now.
Speaking of challenges, I feel like one of my favorite songs in your catalog is Black Truck, and the mood of that is singing about resilience and pushing forward despite challenges. Some of the lyrics read, "I've been through the fire, I felt embers down my spine, and they say I was pushing my luck. I'ma push me up, Matt, all black truck." The song feels like an anthem of perseverance and self-determination. Can you talk about the kind of like the details, the weeds of the inspiration behind the track, and what that black truck, quote unquote, represents for you?
Definitely. Oh yeah, Black Truck has been such a important song in my career and in my life as a writer. I will say I think that song is such a great example of, you sometimes hear people like talk about making their songs and it's like I don't even remember how I wrote it, or like it happened so fast it just kind of wrote itself, that sort of thing. That is true for Black Truck, but what I do recognize as time has passed is it's because I had written that song so many times in different ways and I had spoken to that part of my life, which really Black Truck is about. So many things we're talking about, so many of the no's that I heard, so many of the challenges, the missteps, the things that got in the way of my destiny. That's really what inspired the song. And I think that when I linked up with Ninth Wonder, and Ninth Wonder and I are both from North Carolina, and it was very symbolic for me to go back to North Carolina, this place where I had learned who I was as a writer in my youth, and then come back as an adult and make Black Truck. It's like everything just aligned to kind of finally say in a succinct and, I guess, as you say, anthemic sort of way, that it's okay if your path, and even down to the essence of who you are, doesn't make sense to a lot of people. And I knew that when I made it, like I was singing about myself and my journey, but I knew as soon as we recorded it, like this is going to connect to people who have been through even just any kind of thing that I've been through in life. This is going to connect to people who feel misunderstood. It's going to connect to people who feel like there's always something in the way for them. And I just hoped that the song would help them clear that and help them feel more grounded and empowered in the things that make their journey unique. Because I can definitely say, like, at that time, I was in a really not great place. When I made Black Truck, I was on my last everything dollar, bit of energy, a bit of patience for things to happen for me. And so I think you kind of do hear that in the song too. I think you hear that urgency, and I think that my goal was accomplished with that song, and I still love performing that song so much. And I'm so grateful that I linked up with Night Wonder to make that, because I had no idea what to expect before meeting him, and that we made that one first, and we made that one in like 30 minutes, and I was like, I guess this was supposed to happen just like this.
Wow. Wow, incredible. Yeah, I really appreciated the drum drop on that song. Really, it's like, yes, that is Ninth Wonder. You know, it's incredible.
Oh, and
Um,
sorry to answer about the black
yeah.
truck.
Yeah.
Um, so it was literal. I was definitely like talking a little bit, flexing a little bit, like I'm finally gonna get to some money. I didn't know how at that time, but it did end up being a manifestation, and I did like sign my first deal from that song, and and it things definitely changed in that like literal way. But also when we shot the video for Black Truck, working with my visual collaborators, the Dermo brothers, we talked a lot about the black truck being more symbolic, and it being like, yes, it is a song. It has those hip hop elements. You are flexing a little bit, but it also is something you're speaking to that is very spiritual in the song. And the black truck also symbolizes power and strength and fortitude and ancestral power too, like the things and the energy that's behind you, that's pushing you forward, that's making sure that you see through your vision. Like it just represents strength and resilience.
Is that like a cultural symbolic thing with the matte black truck in North Carolina, or?
No, I just feel like, well, first of all, I just like those types of, I just like matte cars, and it was like
Yeah.
also 2017. I feel like that was way cooler and more new back then. But
Yeah.
um, I just always like wanted a matte black truck. It's really that simple. I just wanted. I didn't have a car. My car had been repossessed, so it was literally like quite literal when I wrote it. Just like all of the people that told me that I wasn't going to ever have a chance at this life and ever going to connect with people as a musician, like I'm gonna get this card that I really like from this.
I love that. That's so cool. Um, I want to talk about the new album.
Mhm.
The Breeze Grew a Fire is your first full length album in several years. You've spoken about reconnecting with yourself while making this album. What were some of the most profound realizations you had during that process about yourself and the whole thing?
Mm. Wow, so many. And it really started, and I mean, now it's been like 5 years since then, but the pandemic definitely started that wave of, like we've heard so many times now, just finally getting pause in life to, pause being forced in life, and having to sit down and reflect and process. And I think just the type of person that I am, I do stay pretty busy. And so it was the first time in life, really, like since childhood, that I just was just looking out the window, and processing all of the things, all of the scars, all of the experiences that I had up until that point. And so that was like the beginning of the revelations of just, yes, I have had a journey with its fair share of challenges, but I want to be sure to not slowly become callous and bitter and jaded, because um, I could feel that had I not had the time to just had things, the momentum of how things are moving, had it not stopped, I could have just been on another kind of hamster wheel of now, okay, now I'm an artist and I'm still hustling all the time and I'm not really able to appreciate how much has changed. And so the first thing was like, again, coming back to the why. I think that was like the first big revelation of being like, all right, I felt so restless and I felt so angry because I felt like 2019 I released my album, and I had been such a journey before that, and then as soon as things started taking off, everything stopped, and I felt really angry about that, and I felt really sad about that. And so I definitely had to get back to the why, to again not become bitter about the circumstance, and probably just less inspired by the way the chips fell for me and my timeline and what I thought was going to happen. Um, and so that came from just like, again, just noticing the beauty in life in a very micro way. Again, the way that kind of kids do. It was like the restlessness turned into boredom, which then turned into slowly like full appreciation for life again and for the small things about life. And then I got pregnant, and that was like a whole new world that, again, because I had been planning for what was going to happen with music, I wasn't intending on getting pregnant, but with everything slowing down and knowing that becoming a mother was always something I wanted to do as well, the timing just changed everything. And I was pregnant, and then I was really like laying low because I was pregnant, and I was really just taking these walks, these like 5 mile walks every day, and just no headphones, just processing life, looking around me. It really just was a time of like deep observation. And so that was like the early stages. But then when I started writing songs for this album, and it wasn't like I said, I'm going to start writing for this album, I was just writing songs. And the song that stuck out to me, that told me like, there's a new album, there's something coming, there's a collection, there's a theme, there's a feeling inside of you that's going to be fruitful, was a song on my album called Ever Needed. It's the second song on it. And I just remember working on it and feeling really emotional. I think I was crying, like making it. I was just like, I feel that I finally tapped into again. Like I've found a way to get out of the bitterness and the, disappointment, but also like just that calloused heart, that kind of like, as much as I love Black Truck, that sort of energy that I wrote Black Truck from, this sort of like, I'm going to show you. I just didn't want my music to live in that place forever, because that's not really the kind of person that I am by nature. And so as I got closer to my nature again, I got closer to that tenderness. Like Ever Needed is a very tender song, and it's fun, and you can move to it, and you can, it's a freeing feeling of a song, but the lyrics are very tender and very sweet and very, I think, true to how I think of my relationships in my life. And that was how I knew that, okay, all of these revelations that I had and all of these things that I gained from slowing down and becoming a mother is finally kind of crystallizing into music again.
Yeah, I guess there's something
Yeah.
to slowing down, and I could really feel that the spirit of the songs are. I mean, you do talk about the one that got everything going, but then I really feel there's like a range in spirits with the songs. I mean, for example, "Phone Me" is such a warm, nostalgic
Hmm.
tribute to friendship, and I guess that's, in retrospect, maybe that place of not focusing on the things that could make you bitter in the past, but taking you to a place of thankfulness and just seeing like the things around you, like, hey, like I have all these amazing friendships and people around me that I love. um are there any specific friendships you could talk about that inspired you to write that song?
Yeah. Yeah. Really, it was my like my friendships with the women in my life that inspired that song. And you explained it so perfectly. It was like, I think it was more subconscious, but it was definitely like, okay, in order to avoid again being bitter and jaded about my journey, and to avoid that sort of approach to writing, being how I approach writing in general, I want to focus on the things that I never have sung about before, but the things that carried me through those times that I kind of like took for granted, honestly, and didn't really like. They were always just there. Like, you asked earlier, were there yeses when there were nos? And it's like these, I wrote almost an album about the people who were the yeses in my life throughout life, who I never found that space for before in my work. So that is definitely inspired by some of my best friends. My best friend Ayan, my best friend Jessica, my best friend Ruby, my best friends out and here in LA. Two of whom are really amazing artists in their own right, Joyce Rice and Arima Adara and Reina, and just like honestly, all of the women. My own sister, because it talks about sisters. So I think like she was my first. She's a good amount older than me, but she was almost like a hybrid between a second mom and like my sister. And I think just like her presence in my life, like that's probably who I talk to the most in life, still to this day. It taught me how to have that sisterly exchange with other women, free of like competition and nastiness, and really like truly love another woman and want to uplift her and empower her and help her recognize her light. So it's inspired by, yeah, by all of my besties for sure. And also, I would say like the kind of underlying message of Foamy is it's not necessarily only for the friends that I'm still in touch with. It's also for those friends that you have those magical, like formative memories with, but your life took a different direction than theirs. And you're just wishing them the best from afar, because I also feel like those friendships like formed me almost as much as the ones that are currently still in my life. And just because, you know, you lost touch or you changed in certain ways where maybe you're not the same compatibility that you were in the past, like I wouldn't be the person that I am without them. So I just wanted a song that kind of encapsulated all of those sisterly relationships in my life, and also brotherly too. I give a shout out to my brothers at the end. And that would definitely be inspired by like my close guy friends, which is pretty well documented, like Spillage Village and Jid is definitely, and Black, like definitely big inspirations for the song too. Just people who just, yeah, it just held you when there was nothing to gain from it. It's just they loved you and they supported you and vice versa, and that's just really special to me.
Of the friends that you listed, did you get a chance to hear their reactions or see their reactions, or yeah, did you get any feedback from them?
Yeah, so the music video for Phone Me is literally like all of us hanging out. So by the time we made the video, they had all heard the song. But the first time that I played Phone Me for my friends was my birthday last year. I did a bonfire at the beach here in LA, and I did like tell everybody that I would play them my album because they had just finished getting like mixed and stuff. But like when we were all there having fun and stuff, I got too like nervous and shy and weird. So like slowly people started leaving, and then there were maybe like 10 core friends still there. And I played the whole album for them. And some of the people I just named, yeah, they were there. And they were all like, "This song is the one." Like they all loved Foamy. I'm like, "Yeah, you guys would love Foamy, but because it's about you." But um, I remember like going to the car, and I think it was Joyce, and she asked me to play Foamy again, and I like played it and turned it all the way up in the car and stuff. And I was like, "Okay, this feels really good. This is exactly what I was hoping for." It's also just really fun to like write a tribute type of song and then watch people that you love enjoy that it's about them. So
Oh, totally.
yeah.
The other song that I wanted to ask you about has a completely different energy,
Mm.
Counterfeit.
Yeah.
Um, what is the story behind that song, and how does it contrast with the rest of the album?
Mm. That's a great question because it definitely does contrast with the rest of the album. And it definitely, to me, is the start of the story of the album. And I think that you've done such a thorough job of with the history of things. I think it fits perfectly into what I was kind of expressing about um, slowly feeling myself hardening and slowly feeling myself becoming the kind of person that might prioritize ego and proving people wrong that were negative towards me. Like Counterfeit is basically rejecting that. Counterfeit is basically the entry point into this more tender, soft, accepting place that the rest of the album then sort of consistently like feels like, I would say, even though there's ranges of sound. I think Counterfeit is the only one that has that like darker feeling to it, a grittier feeling to it. And yeah, I looked at it as, I mean, I wrote the song from a place of like I was speaking to things that I had observed just on my journey, just watching people sort of change as their careers changed, and watching people who I felt were very pure and authentic slowly get lost in the sauce, if you will. And I had gone out to like a party and I had seen something that inspired the thought. And that's kind of how the little seed was planted in my mind of Counterfeit. But as I finished the song and I really thought more about the lyrics, and I finished the lyrics, I realized that I was fascinated by what I had seen because it also related to me. It's just maybe I wasn't doing it in the same way. Maybe I wasn't losing myself in the same way as other people. But it is a call to action sort of song. It's like a please don't forget who this other part, like don't forget that just being yourself was always enough, and don't forget that, you don't have to actually sacrifice the the I don't know, yeah, the pure, the joyful, the sweet, the kind, the thoughtful parts of yourself in order to just like make it. You don't have to turn into a shark. And um, it ended up just, I think, yeah, like I said, kind of being a great entry point into where the rest of the album goes, which is like, okay, once you do reject that and once you do become that original version of yourself again, what does that sound like and what does that feel like? And I think that's the rest of the album.
That's so cool that you have that as a starting point, and it takes you on that journey from a little bit of that black truck energy to that tenderness.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, is Actually, I wanted to ask you this before because I've just recently become a father. I didn't think it would ever happen, and it happened, and it's completely changed my life.
Yes.
Um, how did motherhood shape your perspective in terms of like prioritizing your energy, like
Mm-hmm.
back to that tender place of like before that black truck energy? Because um I feel like when you're kind of like on this chase and you're kind of like hitting the pavement hard, that takes priority. But then when life is created, it kind of like moves things around a little bit in terms of what takes precedence in life.
Oh yeah.
And I'm wondering how that has kind of affected your story.
Oh yeah. Well, then you know for sure as a new parent. I think that's just probably just there's there's never been a change in my life that could compare to how much that one changes your life for sure, which makes sense. I mean, it's a life that you brought into the world. Um, but the best way I can explain it, as far as I mean, as so far, because I have a 3 year old, so we'll see as his life continues, like how it shifts. But the prioritization is like I have to be a lot more intentional when I'm doing my music, when I'm doing that part of my life. I have to be very clear. Like I have to, yeah, be intentional. Like I don't waste time the way that I used to. And creation is a lot about wasting time. So it is a lot about like trying things and oh, it's not that good. I'm going to try something else. And so I've definitely had to adjust, and I'm still adjusting to having so much less time to just make mistakes and tinker around and experiment. But it's definitely forced me to, I would say it's like it forced me to reprioritize everything other than music and my child. Like all of the other things in life that I used to give more time and energy to, even wasting time, like I don't really do it anymore. I feel like, of course, you have to live your life because it can't just be that I'm a mother and then I go to the studio and write and then a mother, and I have to live other parts of my life as an individual too. And I try to include my son in my life as much as possible. I don't have a lot of friends with kids like myself yet, so he is the only kid a lot of times, like hanging out. And I'm sure his life will reflect that he's around like creative musical people and being the kid that everyone's like hyping up and excited to see every time and stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of it's prioritizing everything else differently, and a lot of things just change. Like a lot of the reason I think I wrote about friendship on this album for a few songs is because I missed my friends, and I missed the times when I could just pull up to one of my friends' houses and we waste the day together or whatever. And I think that there was something really important to me about immortalizing those memories through music, because when you have a child, you kind of have this intuitive feeling like it's never going to quite be the same as that again. And that's okay because life is like that. You have periods of life that are like this and periods of life that are like that. I think the most important thing for me is always just making sure that my son understands that when I am away, what I'm doing has a purpose. It's like what I'm doing is very intentional to me, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to other people too. And I have explained to him that mommy making songs means that I can buy him more food. And like that
Mm,
seems to work too. He's like, oh, okay, mommy has to work to like make a living too. But I think I'm still finding the balance, honestly.
mhm.
I'm still figuring out my process as a mother who
Yeah.
makes music. Yeah.
That's so fascinating because you do talk about the process and being intentional, kind of streamlining things, but you've always been known for not only one layer of that process in terms of creation, in terms of like writing the lyrics and melodies, and you're kind of someone who does it all. And I wanted to also ask you about the production process for you and achieving your sonic vision for this album.
So like when I was so Ever Needed is the song that I was saying, like when I made that one, I started feeling like maybe I was tapping into something that would be a full project of ideas. That was because I started experimenting more with drums. Like this album, I think where it differs than from my previous things is like every song is kind of based around the drum loop and the drum beat. So that was the first time that I approached my music like that. I usually would start by writing songs like on guitar or maybe piano, usually guitar, and then I would build the production behind that. But now I just feel like honestly it was because of becoming a mother too, and just how tiring it is and how like sleepy I was. Like I needed something to lift me up. I needed something to energize me and just kind of bring me back to that like fun, more lively part of making music. I didn't really want to sit and make a folk song and slow it down. I wanted to like go to the studio to wake up, you know?
Mhm.
And so all of the songs being based around the drums and the percussion really just that was the part of the production that was new and more fun and exciting to me. And that was the tinkering that I was doing and like learning how to affect drums and percussion and breaking things down and reconstructing them and like that sort of stuff was my outlet for that curiosity this time around. And I think that like the chords and the instrumentation otherwise is a lot more kind of taking it back to my basics, like very kind of like softer, simpler chord progressions, like over drums that kind of force movement out of you. And so that was why it was so fun to produce this album for me was like just really stepping more into that part of me that loves to dance and loves
Mm.
to and it's just like playful, like that's a huge part of my personality, and I felt like that maybe wasn't coming through as much production wise with my music, so I definitely wanted to just make music that I would listen to and be myself listening to. Yeah, so it all started with the drums for sure.
Awesome. So in producing drums, what is your technical approach? Do you do the MPC thing? Are you on FL? Are you on Ableton? Do you chop up loops? Like, did you take some tips from Ninth Wonder and be like, hey, I see what you're doing over there?
Well, definitely. So he uses the machine, but I'm sure he used the MPC at some point. But yes, I did. I did use the MPC on a few songs. I got an MPC myself, and that was really fun. And again, new for me. So you had that sort of childlike curiosity with it too. Um, the song that I use that on primarily is called Meteorite, and I had so much fun making that loop and just like toying around with it. But I love all the things that you said. I mean, I don't use Fruity Loops right now. I don't have it on my computer. Um, but definitely chopping up loops and then reconstructing in more creative ways or ways that feel more right for my sound. But man, just or like my co-producer Sam sending me things and me chopping up things that he sent or yeah, I think that it's kind of a little bit of everything with the drums. And I'm thinking through like some of the songs, like White Doves is a song that I produced on my own. And that was like, I heard a loop and I was like, just the texture of this drum loop is so good. but I want to like manipulate it a little bit. So yeah, I got to chopping that one up, and that really like informed what I did on top of it so much. Like it's hard to imagine what songs would have come had I not started that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's fun. Definitely. Drums are fun.
Totally. We're now at the final question of the main section of the interview.
Okay.
And as I mentioned before, we are a platform that has a mandate to educate the next generation of creators, music creators. For aspiring songwriters, artists, producers who look up to you, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I love this part because I come from two teachers. um,
Mhm.
no, I definitely would say number one, don't be afraid to do something that you don't feel exists yet, for sure. Don't be afraid to express yourself unconventionally. Don't be afraid to start producing, even if you don't feel like you know what you're doing. That was like a big one for me. Like for years, I knew that I heard the song in my head. I knew I heard the bass line and the drums and the guitar and the keys. But because I didn't think I knew how to technically produce, I was so afraid. Or people would be like, hey, like, you should be a producer because you come into sessions and you know exactly what to, and I'm like, no, I don't know how to work any of those things. So I would say just like start, just literally just start. And if you're already at the point where you've started and now you're moving forward, um, a big piece of advice that I always give is to just make sure you're always operating from a place of like looking out horizontally around to your community instead of like trying to, okay, I made a few cool beats, now I want to get them to the biggest artist that I possibly can. It's like there is so much fertile ground all around you, and I can't imagine what I would be like as a producer had I not just shown my friends my beats and gotten feedback, or somebody being like, you know what, this could hit a little bit harder if you did this, or earlier on, like me my confidence being built by my friends taking me seriously before anybody else did. So definitely just the individualism that we often are encouraged to live by now is not, in my opinion, the best way to grow as a producer or a writer at all. I mean, definitely as a producer. And so that's a huge piece of advice, is to always just look around you before you look up at what other people are doing who are out of reach to you. Um, yeah, and like thirdly, just have fun. Like
Mhm.
truly it should be fun. Like it is music. It's not like, I don't know, like rocket science or coding or something. It's
Yeah.
music. So I do think that the joy and the feeling that you feel as you're making it, I do think gets cooked into the music and gets
Mm.
cooked into the feeling of what you're making. So try to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying the process, then maybe it's a little too heady, and maybe it's a little too, you're taking it a bit too seriously, because it is music. So I like to think of it as like being in the sandbox again,
Mm.
because that's the feeling that people are going to carry when they listen to it as well.
So good. That's going to go a long way for a lot of people. And I just thank you for your rawness, your honesty, your vulnerability, and just your willingness to share your story. Um, would it be okay if we move on to the rapid fire round and then close out with a final question about what you got next,
Yes.
coming out next,
Yes.
coming out with next? Um, okay, number one, what DAW do you use and why?
Ableton, because it's the best for chopping, playing instruments into it, singing into it, all the things, all encompassing.
Favorite plugins?
Mm. Okay, people tease me because I feel like, but my favorite throwback that I still use is Massive.
Wow, that is a throwback. I, I mean,
Yeah,
they do have, that's a very classic synth, but
yeah,
I think, yeah, I
very
haven't
classic.
heard that name in a minute. But
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm not a huge like. I feel like that part of it is my co-producer does get involved more, and he's so into those things. But that's my favorite synth plugin
dope.
that I still think I don't use it as much because I had to chill on it. But yeah.
What is a sound that always brings you joy?
Mm, I love a good, like, whirly type of sound, like a warm, rich keys type of sound.
How would you rank your music creator skill sets out of 10 for the following? Beat making,
Mm, 6.5.
lyric writing,
9.
sound design,
I'll say 8. 7.5. 8.
mixing,
7. That's nice.
top lining,
9.
music theory,
Oh, Lord. 5 at this point. I forgot all this stuff.
arranging,
And that one's up there. I'd say 9 as well.
what is your reaction or facial expression when you know you made some heat?
It's got to be something like, ooh.
Oh, I like that one. When do you feel 100% happy with a song you made?
Honestly, when I listen back to it and I have either chills or tears in my eyes.
It's good. How do you stay sharp lyrically and melodically?
Lyrically is just from living life and writing in my journal. And melodically, interestingly enough, I try not to listen to, like, I'm pretty conservative about what I listen to. So
Mm,
I try to listen to music that's more complex than even the music that I make, so that
mhm.
melodically, that's my influence. Is like I listen to a lot of music that's not in English as well because I think melodically, like, I'm just processing the melodies of them. So that's a big one. I actually do listen to mostly either instrumental or like music that's not in English.
So cool. What do you understand now about the music business that you didn't understand when you first started?
How many people you have to pay for everything, and what you end up having. But also, one thing I will say is that there are so many good people in the music industry because I think
Mm,
that's a common misconception, especially like artists. I think that you hear a lot about the other side of things, but I would say like there are so many beautiful people who care so much about music,
mm,
run into at least.
so good. If AI technology was somehow able to take over our jobs as music creators, what new career path would you choose?
Oh Lord, I'm just like, can they start with like doing our laundry or something instead of just making the art? Um, that's a great question. I've thought about that. I thought about that. I feel like I would definitely do something again with kids. I don't know.
Mm,
I don't know if I would go the more like doula route, um, or the more teacher route, but something with the future of the world for sure. Yeah, yeah. I think maybe a doula, honestly, at this point.
really?
Mhm.
I could totally see you being a teacher because I get this like vibe that you're very good with kids.
I've always been the baby whisperer. I will say that. So
Yeah.
I'll take that one. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Mereba, we made it to the final question. And once again, I just want to thank you for participating in the rapid fire round and participating in our interview. It's been so fun. And like I said, you're such beautiful energy. What is next for Mereba? Anything you want to promote to the Sonically community?
Yes. Well, we are on the eve of my next album coming out, it being available everywhere you listen to music. The Breeze Grow a Fire. I'm very excited to just see where the music ends up. And My tour is going to be starting. My US tour is starting in April, so that's a big one. I'm going all through the US and Canada, and my European tour will be in the fall. So those are both big ones. And yeah, just more music, more collaborations. Maybe hopefully like some sort of deluxe at some point of this album. And yeah, just stay tuned.
So good. Well, we'll definitely be on the lookout for all of those things you mentioned. We are rooting for you. We are praying for you. And we just wish you so many more blessings along your journey. And yeah, we thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say that my son will love your name so much.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
I know you do. I know you do. I didn't want to say it, but I just like his obsession. I'm literally looking at Elmo on my kitchen table. So yeah, I will tell him.
Well, tell him I said hello, but
I
he might
will.
be disappointed that it's not the Sesame Street guy.
I will tell him that you said hello.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Have a great day.
you too. Take care.